In this presentation, we will enter personal cash outflows from the checking account into QuickBooks, outflows of cash related to transfers to the business checking account from the personal account, entertainment, and charity within QuickBooks. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. Here we are on the home page. We currently have the open windows open. We open the open windows by going to the view drop down and selecting the open windows list. We're now going to enter our checks into our bank statement by going to the banking drop down and going to the use register, banking and use register. And we'll choose the checking account and OK. And now we've already entered our deposits. We are now looking at our bank statement. So we're going to take our bank statement. Here's the deposits we have already entered. We're focusing now on our checks to put these into the system. Now I'm calling them checks. They're going to be outflows, and we're going to say that they're all electronic transfers at this time. And so we have the date and we have the who we paid. And our challenge will be to assign who we paid to a particular account. A challenge a little bit more difficult than in our business accounts because we don't have as standardized a setup to do so. But it's a nice way to do it as well because we get to choose how do we want to group these things. So as we enter this into the first month of operations, we want to think about, what type of groupings do I want to have? Because the more groupings we have, the more detail we have. But the less groups we have, the easier it is to input into the system. So the easiest kind of setup for QuickBooks would be to have one revenue account and one expense account. But that doesn't give us too much detail. So we want to break out the expense into some categories that will give us some detail on a personal perspective, and so it depends more on whatever we want to track, however we want to group the information. So we'll go through this process here, and we'll enter these checks into our check register. We'll get down to about January 10th as we enter this information. So let's start from the top. We're going to say on January 1st we had Outback Steakhouse. That's going to be a restaurant, a chain restaurant that we went to. So we need to put that into our system. So we have an outflow related to that restaurant. So we're going to say on our system 010120, that's January 1st, 2020. No check number, so I'm just going to put an E for an electronic transfer. And then we're going to have to type in Outback Steakhouse. First time we have this entered into our system. If we go there again, it should autofill for us. So I'm going to select a tab. Going to say quick add because I don't really need the address for Outback or anything, and we're going to say vendor, that's the one we want. OK. So we'll say OK and then type in the amount of $150. This is a payment, so we're in the payment column now, and then we need to assign where it's going to go to. And here's where it gets kind of tricky because we could track actually Outback. We could say Outback restaurant expense. And that would mean every time we go to Outback, we're saying how much we go there. And we might want to do that. We might have a few restaurants that we want to say, I want to know exactly what I pay to this restaurant. Or we might say that we want it all into entertainment. Anything that's entertainment, I'm going to put into entertainment. I don't care where it is. I don't care if it's a steakhouse or if we go to some kind of fair or something, whatever it is, I'm just going to group all that kind of stuff into entertainment. Or we might want to break it out in some fashion within the two, meaning possibly we have restaurants that are going to be a certain type of restaurant, Outback and similar restaurants, and possibly we compare fast food restaurants, and we want to track what we consider to be fast food restaurants as compared to like a sit-down restaurant maybe versus other types of entertainment. So this is where, since personal side is all personal, that we might want to break down some of these things, whereas on the business we would just call it meals and entertainment would probably be the category it goes into. We'd probably want to break it down a bit more so that we can think about where are we going, what are we doing on these types of things from the personal side. So I'm going to put it in here as restaurants. I'm going to call it a sit-down, like sit-down restaurants. So that's going to be a group. And again, that group will sound kind of weird when you compare it to a business. But we're going to try to break out some of these restaurants into certain categories for the personal. That's what I'm going to set up. And so we'll set that up. New account. It is going to be an expense account. All these are going to be expenses for the most part. And that's all we need. So we'll say save and close and enter. And so next time we go there, this will be easier. It should just report for us next time. So I'm going to cross this one out and say highlight that. Then we've got the pizza kitchen. And I'm going to say that's a similar category. So I'm not going to break it out into the pizza kitchen, but I am going to break it out in that I'm going to keep it in like that sit down type restaurant area. So we're going to say this is E again, and this is going to be pizza kitchen. And new vendors, I'm going to select tab, add it, going to quickly add it, and then we're going to say it's a vendor. And the amount is $98. And now I'm just going to put that to the restaurants again. I'm just typing in restaurants. It'll populate for us if we select the drop down. We don't have too many expense accounts, but if you start typing it in there, it'll then populate for us, and that's what we want, and enter. Next item we have, I'm going to highlight that because we found that, is the pub, the corner pub, the bar. So we're going to say, and maybe that's something we want to break out differently. Maybe we want to break out, a bar type thing rather than a sit down restaurant, and say, I want to know how much I spend on just going out to eat versus how much I go to like a pub type thing. So maybe I want to break those out. Maybe I want to know how much I pay to a specific pub or restaurant or something like that. So we can maybe have some leverage at the place and say, hey, I spend a lot of money here. and so we could do that. So I'm going to break this one out a bit differently. So we'll go back to our record, and we're going to say this is E, and this is going to be that corner pub. That's going to be the name of our pub here. Tab, and we're going to quick add, and it's going to be a vendor once again, and 65. And then we need a new expense account. I'm not going to put it into the restaurant this time. So I'm going to put this into something like a different evening entertainment, like pubs, bars, clubs, a type of expense account. So I can track that in a separate area. So we'll set that up, and it's going to be, once again, an expense type of account. We're going to say OK and enter. And you might be asking, why don't we break things out like that on a business account? Because we do go to different restaurants and things like that. And you may do that on a business account. We may say, hey, this is where we spend this entertainment, this and that entertainment. But remember that the goal is different on the business side. Our goal is to generate revenue. So wherever we go, it's really kind of all geared towards revenue generation, or it should be if it's on the business account. On the personal side, we have different goals. We're just trying to live well, whatever that goal is. And therefore, again, our groupings on these types of things will be different, even though we might be doing similar things. Back to our bank statement. So we're going to highlight this. And now there's a transfer. So now we took money out of our personal checking and we put it into the business account. We're only tracking right now the personal side because this is our personal QuickBooks file. So we're going to take it out of the personal file and transfer it to the business account. So if we go back to QuickBooks, we're going to say, all right, that happened on 1/5/1. We're going to say E15E, and it's going to be a transfer. So I'm going to actually put transfer to business checking as our vendor. So I'll say tab. I'm going to quick add. Now we could set it up as a vendor or other. I'm going to put it in there as a vendor because I can actually track it in the vendors section easily that way. So I'm going to set it up as a vendor, even though it's a transfer to ourselves, to our own business. So it's 2,000 that's going out. And then the other side, we're going to set up an account called due from the business, or you can call it a loan to the business. And this is a little bit tricky because we're going to put it on the books not as an expense. This isn't an expense for us because we're taking it out of one checking account and putting it into the other. We're taking it out of our personal checking account, putting it into the business checking account. So I want to track that on both accounts. I want to be able to see it in the business QuickBooks file and on our file, and they should kind of match out to each other. So I'm going to put it in here as an asset type account. So we're going to say setup, and we're going to go to the not an expense. We're going to put it as an other current asset type account. And again, this is a bit of a trickier one because of course we're transferring this to our business account. So we're going to say save and close and enter. At this point, let's check our financial statements so far, see what we have, and then we'll keep going. Reports up top, company and financial. We're going to go down to the balance sheet standard, and we'll change the date range up top from the customized reports to 01/01/1 or 20, January 1st, 2020, to 12/31, 20. So January through December 2020 and okay. Okay, so there we have our information. So here's our checking account. If we double click on it, we've got all of our activity thus far. I'm going to close this back out. And then we've got this due from business. That's going to be what is owed to us now from the business. So we took this money, we invested it into the business. We'll see it on the business account because we put it into the business equity section under investments. So these two should match each other out, and we can kind of track how much money we're putting into the business versus how much money, hopefully, over time, we will be taking out of the business. If we take a look at our profit and loss now by going to the reports up top, scrolling down to company and financial, and we want to take a look at the profit and loss standard, changing the dates once again from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20, January 1st to December 31st. We then see our income that we entered prior to this, and we've got our 2 restaurants so far, and of course the transfer isn't included here. Okay, back to our checking account. And back to the next item on the bank statement, we're going to cross off the transfer or highlight it. And then now we paid the Red Cross. Now that's going to be a charitable organization. The reason we put it red here is because these are items we might have to track, and we might want a specific category because we might need them for tax preparation at the end of the year. So by doing our personal records, we can note those that are tax related and at least put them in a similar account that we can easily group together. We might want to group them in terms of what we got to do to give it to our tax preparer. So we're going to say this one is going to be January 6th E, and it's going to be the American Red Cross. So American Red Cross, it's new, so I'm going to say tab. We're going to add it. We're going to keep it as a vendor and okay. And it might bother some people to have it as a vendor because you might think, all these people we're paying, they're not all vendors. I mean, some of them are not vendors, but they're all people that we're paying. So if we set them up as vendors, we'll be able to go into the vendor section and see what we paid a bit easier. We can group our information by the vendors. So even if we don't consider like the Red Cross, a charitable organization, a vendor because they're not like a store, they are someone that we're paying something from, and we're getting something. We're getting their services of helping charity. So we'll set it up as a vendor, but you could set it up as other. Also, I recommend setting it up as a vendor so you can go to the vendor center and track the payments from there. So 250, and this is going to be charity. I'll set it up as a charitable contribution. Now you might think, well, maybe I want to track just what we gave to the Red Cross, and you maybe we want to break out just the Red Cross. Or what I'm going to do here is say all charitable organizations I'm going to group into the same account. And if we need to break out the detail, then we can, because we can have them in the vendor reports. So we could break out how much we paid by who we paid. So in this case, I'm gonna keep it as a more generalized category of just charitable contributions. And it's going to be an expense type account. So we'll set up the account, and that's it. So save and close. Back to the bank statement, we're going to say we found that one, or we entered that one, and highlight it. So now save the children. That's going to be another charity. So it's another charity. So let's go back here, do the similar transaction. This happened on the 6th. We're going to say it's going to be an E for electronic transfer, and it's going to be to save the children. New charitable organization, new vendor. So we'll say tab. We're going to set up as the quick setup, and it will be a vendor. That's what we want. So we'll say okay. And then it's going to be for $65. And we're going to say this is, again, I'm just going to type it in there. Like I could select the drop down, of course, and find the charitable organizations, or just start typing and it'll populate for us. Next time I hit tab and it went to the next time, what'll happen is that it should populate automatically. It should just put out charity. Okay, so we're going to say enter. That's that one. Back to our check register, we're going to do these two other ones, which is Amazon and Audible. So I'm going to say highlight that. So Amazon. So we'll go back to our reports here, and that's going to be on the 8th. And E, and I'm going to type in Amazon. Now, I already have book royalties. I don't want to have book royalties here because this isn't book royalties. So to differentiate the two, I'm just going to hit the space bar a couple times, and that'll make a difference. So it's not the same uh, wording. So I can add a new vendor without having it be that one. And then tab, and then quick add, and vendor, and it's going to be 250. Now Amazon's going to be... Note that I miskeyed the amount for Amazon. I put 250 for the American Red Cross rather than the 30 for Amazon. I'm going to leave that for now, and we'll go back to it when we do the bank reconciliation. So that'll give us an example of what the bank reconciliation will do for us, because that'll help us to catch the fact that I put 250 in there instead of what should have been put, which would be the 30. So we will adjust that with the bank reconciliation at that time. A weird one, because every time we make an Amazon, if we pay for something at Amazon, we don't know exactly what it is unless we go look at it. We might see something on our bank statement that says, yeah, you paid Amazon for merchandise or something. Then we'd have to go and figure out what the merchandise is that we purchased. So we can't do that. We can go in and check each time, or we can have kind of a Amazon expense account, which is very generalized, doesn't give us a lot of detail, but it'll tell us at least what the payments we made to the specific person we made. Or we can set something up that's just going to be like personal expenses, personal purchases from something like Amazon. So you may want to do a combination of those things. I'm actually going to set up here an Amazon account, and it's just going to be a generic Amazon expense account. I hit the spacebar 2 times again to put that in place. And what I would basically do here, or one method you can use and say, okay, if there's small purchases on Amazon, I'm going to put it on as an Amazon expense. And therefore, if I have a question about it, I can go back to Amazon and I can check my purchases by date and the amount that I put in on it. However, if it's a large dollar amount, maybe then I want to go look at it. If we bought a new TV or something like that, then I'd probably want to go look at it and say, okay, there's a purchase of a new TV, and maybe record that in a separate way as basically a purchase of the TV, which might be an assets type account. We might have we might think that all Amazon accounts are some typical type of purchase because we purchase something like supplies typically on Amazon, where we could group them as supplies. So different types of formats we can have on that. Of course, remember, if I put an Amazon account, that might look really weird from a business perspective. I would never do that on a business account because it doesn't fit. If I try to do a tax return or something and I just called it Amazon expense, that's not going to, where am I going to put that? But this isn't going into the tax return typically. This is how best do I want to group my expense accounts, balancing out the time I want to spend to enter this data into the system versus the information I'm getting from it. So there's less standardization for it. So I'm just going to say Amazon, tab, set it up, and it's going to be an expense account. We're going to say save and close, and okay. And then the next item we have is going to be Audible. So Audible, we'll say highlight that. And that's like audiobooks. So if we were to buy audiobooks, and that happened on the 10th. It's E. This is usually a subscription thing. So if you buy Audible. Now, I'll say tab, I'll set up Audible, quick add, okay. It's going to be 65, or what was it, 15? 15. And so it's owned by Amazon. So we could keep it under Amazon. We're paying Amazon again. Or we could break it out into a separate account. We might buy audiobooks through Audible one at a time, or just pay a subscription for them. So typically I would break it out, and we could call it audiobooks because that's what we're buying from this vendor. But I'm going to keep it as Audible because that's who I pay for it. So again, it's not quite the same as we might do on a business. If it was a business, we would be buying the books supposedly to help with the business, you would think. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a business expense. So we'd have to say, dues and subscriptions or continuing education or something like that. Here, we need to just group it on what we want to pay for. The purpose of it is because we like to listen to books, and it's personal. So we could group it on whatever we want to be able to look back and say, how much do I want to spend on that particular thing that I like doing, listening to audiobooks. And so we could put it into audiobooks, or we can put it into Audible and maybe compare it to other type of listening formats that we might have, some other kind of audiobook platform possibly. So I'm just going to keep it in as Audible expense. Audible expense. And tab, set it up. It's going to be an expense type account. We'll say save and close and enter. So that is that one. We're going to go back and say we found the Audible. And then so that's where we'll stop at this point. Next time we'll continue on with the college tuition and so on. If we go back to the reports real quick, if we go to the balance sheet, in the open Windows balance sheet, I'm going to refresh the report. Then we have our checking account with all the detailed activity. We still have the 2000 down here, checking account. If we double click on it, we see the activity that we have so far. If we double click on any of these items, such as the Audible, then we're going to go into that account. It's a check now, but it's the same information. QuickBooks is going to use the check as the form that it fills out, but it's the same information we obviously put into the check register. So we could find it this format by check, make changes if we need to, or go back to the check register and find it in that format as well. Closing this back out and closing this back out. If we go to the profit and loss and say yes, now you can see we have our income and we have our expenses. And again, if you look at this and you think of business categories, you're going to think, hey, that's some funny expenses. But from a personal side, our goal is to say, hey, this is what we're spending money on. How do I want to group these things with the objective of balancing my whatever I want to spend my money on compared to other things I could spend my money on. And from that perspective, that's how we gotta think about these groupings. Do they make sense for us in terms of where do we want to spend our time? Where do we want to spend our money? Is it telling me what we need to know from that format? From a tax format, is it grouping certain things that I might need at year end, including things like charitable contributions? I'm also going to change this one a bit. So notice that this evening was cut off a little bit. So maybe I'll go back into the lists up top, chart of accounts. And this account I just changed by right-clicking and edit. So you can go back into these accounts and edit them if you want the name. And I changed it to, I deleted the space. And notice you only have a limited amount of space to enter. So I put pub, comma, club. And so other ways you can abbreviate this, you might want to just put abbreviate entertainment somehow or something like that, or just eliminate evening. Just put, possibly it would be better if we just put entertainment and then pub, clubs, and pubs, bars. What did I have originally? Bars and clubs. Something like that could work. They won't let me put the and there. Pubs, pub, bar, and clubs. Something like that. So just note that you could go back in here and adjust it. We do have a limitation on the amount of text for the account name. So I'm going to say save and close. And there's that. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.